I'm Chelsea, and welcome to This is Hard to Say. I'm here to talk about topics that are hard to say, which was originally birthed in 2020 from my lifelong eating disorder. I would love to educate people on disordered eating and also create a platform for us to talk about hard things like trauma, childhood, even simple interactions in our day-to-day life, joy, art. So this really is for all humans. And with that, we'll get going. Okay, so since we've been talking so much about food, I actually really do want to talk a little bit about art.
Yeah.
Because art can be, I love art. I feel like art, it brings you to the highest highs, just the most highest highs, but also can take you to the lowest lows. And there's so many challenges in art. There's so many hard things to talk about in art. And there's also so many joyous things to be like, oh my gosh, look what I created. But sometimes we say, oh my gosh, look what I created. And the world doesn't respond the way we are responding to the work. Right. And so anyways, I do think this is also a hard to say topic, but also a joyous topic. And I guess I just want to open the floor to like learn more about because you've had quite an art career. I've known you for quite a few years now and seen you in multiple capacities, teaching at the City College. That's where I met you
Oh, was it? I thought you met me at my wedding.
Oh, no, I met you at City College and then...
Okay, yeah.
And then I was at your wedding.
Yeah.
And...
I was subbing for Stephanie. Or was I in drawing?
You had a class.
I was teaching drawing.
Yeah, you were teaching drawing.
Yeah.
But, and then, I've also, taken figure drawing classes with you that have absolutely given me a perspective on figure drawing that no other teacher had. And you're so community forward and collaborative forward. And I just feel like a lot of artists are closed off to that experience and shy and scared and throw in imposter syndrome and you're just a tangled mess. So yeah, I just want to open the floor and hear what you maybe want to touch on and talk about what's giving you joy, what's not, what's challenging, anything. What do you want to say about art and your relationship with that amazing thing that can be great and terrible all in one?
Thanks. I'm so excited to hear that reflection. And so, back at yourself of like where is your art? Like the same thing, in inverse to me, I'm trying to remember, like I remember you being a printmaker. I remember you making prints, which was I thought with Stephanie's class. But then I also remember you coming down to do drawing the figure model. I think my relationship to art, luckily has it's been my whole life. I've related to art. My grandfather, when I was in art school and going and having breakfast with my grandfather and doubting, being an adult who was in art school and like really pushing to put my art as my number one identifier. When somebody says, hey, what do you do? What do you get up to? Like, what keeps you busy? Being confident in saying that you're an artist is such a weird, like... I
don't even like saying it sometimes. It's like feels gross at times.
It feels gross.
Because then people are like, well, what do you do?
Right.
What have you done?
Right.
What galleries have you shown it? And you're like, do you even know what an artist is? Like, they're pretty much, they crawl into a hole and they're psycho. So don't ask me what medium I do.
Yeah.
You know?
It's every time there's the follow-up question of like, it's an uncomfortable moment where it's like, when somebody says, oh, what do you do? And you say an accountant. And that used to be a very clear thing to explain.
Right. Yeah, you do numbers, cool.
Oh, you either do accounts receivable or accounts payable.
Right, yeah, or both.
Or taxes,
yeah.
But when you're an artist, there's this, I compare it to a lot of different things. An artist is an author, an artist is a composer, an artist is somebody who is attempting to communicate through a vehicle that is this external thing. And it feels weird. It feels weird to be so ephemeral with people who are asking you a very concrete thing. Like, how do you pay your rent? And I kind of wish they would say that, like, what pays your rent? And then you could be like, oh, well, my bank account is multifaceted and difficult. I teach people how to build axes. And then that would blow their minds, the other direction.
And then they're like, that's art?
Yeah, how is that art? Yeah, exactly.
Oh, the questions I've been asked and the things I've heard people
Mhm.
say to me around art, I just, sometimes my jaw will not come back up off the floor.
It's true. It's true. And so I would say to my grandfather, like, is this right? He wasn't an artist. He was a hardworking. He was the hardest working person I'd ever seen. And I would say, like, does this make any sense to be an artist? Like, I just feel like, and I was expecting him to say to me, well, you should have, a fail-safe. You should have a backup plan. You should be, art can be what you do for fun on the weekends, but you shouldn't make it your whole life. And he, like, Merlin Hawkins was his name. And,
What a name.
What a name. Merlin Orville Hawkins. And he puts his fork down, and he's kind of like with authority, and he like stops what he's doing, he turns and he looks me straight in the eye, and he's just like, that's all you've ever been.
Wow.
And he's like, when you were 4, I went on a trip and I saw this shirt that said, "Here comes trouble," and I brought that back to you because I like to say, "Here comes trouble," because you don't do things the way everybody does them.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing that he saw that and accepted it.
Yeah.
Because that generation was the type of generation to say, no, you can't go be an artist. What are you doing?
He was that perfect mix of under different circumstances. Had he not been born dirt poor, had he not walked across the country during the Depression picking every crop between Arkansas and my hometown in Washington.
Wow.
Had he
What's your hometown?
Ridgefield, Washington. It's on the Columbia River. Had he not, like, blown stumps out of the spinster down the road's backyard with dynamite when he was 10 because he needed the money to pay food with the rest of his family, I don't know what he would have got up to. He did amazing things in that short time, and the world just kind of kept kicking him in the teeth in various different ways. He had enormous successes, and then he'd get knocked backwards. But for that man to look at his grandson and say, what you're doing, if you want to do it, it's the right thing to do.
That's so cool.
Was an incredible gift.
Yeah.
Truly. To be able to look at the world and say. And so I've tried to take that with me. It's 20 years ago.
Well, said you at 4, it's imprinted.
Yeah.
You're never going to forget that.
It's a lot. Well, he
or
said,
5 or whatever. However, I mean, I guess 4 was the shirt thing, but
Yeah,
whatever
4 was the
age
shirt.
you were that he said it.
let's get our timelines straight.
Yes, sorry.
Because otherwise this story won't make any sense that I was in art school at 4. But,
This was when you were in art school.
Yeah.
God.
Well, but I got some real lucky breaks. Is that I got introduced to certain people and certain concepts early on that pulled me out of kind of my own bad instincts. Namely, that I was making really cliche derivative paintings that sold really well, but didn't tell a bigger story, and certainly didn't attempt to bond myself, my work, with my community. Instead, I just thought they were, just cool paintings that people would like to look at, which is fine. Those are appropriate. That's an appropriate way to communicate. And I got introduced to a form of contemporary art that at the time in the early 2000s we were calling intermedia, which was where you would have a genre that was non-conforming, and you wouldn't. It was like video painting or sculpture photography, and it's like, oh, is it photography of sculpture? No, is it? Like, it's using objects to make a photo-realized image that's not through a camera lens. And it's like, oh, well, what do you call that? And you're like, it's intermedia. Like, it doesn't fit comfortably into one box or the other.
Yeah.
And I got introduced to these artists that were doing things that were so much more exciting to me than a flat image hanging on the wall. And I started chasing down this concept of the social practice, of the intervention, of the happening, of the where it
functional work, really.
It felt to me like real life.
It
felt to me like it wasn't me synthesizing something on the wall for people to look at. It felt like an actual memory was being formed, an actual connection between people, and that carried into my teaching. So whenever I'm teaching, while the subject that we're usually working with feels very tactile and physical and visceral, the intellectual kind of thing that's moving around the top of it is usually like what it's like. I'm giving you the tool to make the drawing. Now we're going to talk about what the drawing is doing after you've made it, and what you're putting into it, the intention in the drawing that you're making. And so all of that, like, controlled authorship, that idea of like how to build stuff. When it comes to like part of your earlier question about or statement about art can make you exalted and feel happy and elated, and then simultaneously or moments later can kick
Just
you.
drop you in a hole.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is, there's been a lot of research around the chemical reactions that are happening inside of your head. That when you're working in flow state, or when you're working to make a creative process, if you have all of the chemicals in your brain, there's 6 of them that fire off really good. And I used to have them all memorized, but it's like, it's dopamine, it's serotonin, it's norepinephrine, it's those are the 3 I'm going to get right now. Oxytocin, there's 2 more. But there's these beautiful chemicals, and you only have a very finite amount of them. But when you drop into your flow state, you drop into your ultimate creative place, the place that feels so good, all of those chemicals are firing. When you're in a fight, you might have 2 or 3 of the chemicals going off. When you're
is adrenaline one of them?
No.
That's a hormone.
Yeah, you're gonna make me look these up, but anyway.
No, I won't.
Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheal and Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. I just butchered his name. He's a Czechoslovakian philosopher or researcher who does a lot of science around flow state and around these brain chemicals. But one of the beauties is that, and there's lots of conversation around flow state, but it essentially it's when your brain chemistry shifts and you move into this creation mode, and all of your stressor hormones flush; they just leave.
Oh, amazing.
Your frontal lobe expands into a place of where it stops focusing on worry and anxiety and the things around you that you're worried about, and instead it kind of deactivates. And normally we're such good humans because we have this giant frontal lobe, and it allows us to anticipate if a snake is going to bite us or if a wolf is going to jump.
Yeah, which is overwhelming in today's age.
Right, because it's not just that. Right now it's taxes, and now it's your bills to pay, and now it's what do other people think of me? And,
right.
Yeah. And so when you're talking about eating disorders, what's really one of the main things that's probably going off. It's not science I've done, but your frontal lobe's very active.
Right. Yeah.
And so you're anticipating all of the things that you might need to anticipate to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Which is a really good evolutionary thing, but it's not great for feeling still and feeling
right. It's like having traumas as a child and then continuing to protect yourself as an adult from that trauma, but you don't need to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and this is why people coming out of disordered eating and other psychological struggles, or anything that has to do with trying to get healthier with your body, creativity is amazing for it because it deactivates the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe is where your self-awareness is. It's where you're concerned about what people think of you. It's where you keep track of time. It's where you keep track of this narrative of who you are. And instead you drop into this place where you're just making. And all 6 of those drugs all 6 of those chemicals are going off in your brain at the same time, and they're working to make you feel focused on what you're doing and feel like what you're executing is meaningful. And that's what oxytocin does. It gives you the cuddle drug.
Right.
It's what right after you have a baby, oxytocin's what's firing off.
So high. Yeah, I held a new baby the other day, and I was like, oh.
Oh, absolutely. It's why squishy babies are the best.
Yeah.
It's because they suddenly your brain just starts pumping oxytocin into you to make you attached to that feeling. It's why cuddling with your partner feels so good. It's why cuddling yourself when you're feeling sick. And you get that oxytocin going is to protect you against the virus that's fighting you and you're feeling bad. It's oxytocin's going off in your body to make you feel warm and safe. So here's the rub. So you're working, you're making a piece of art, and all your chemicals are firing. And if you think of them like a chemical pump, and it's pumping those chemicals in, eventually that reservoir is going to run dry, like a hot water heater. You're going to run out of hot water.
Right. Yeah.
And your body's going to go into refraction, and suddenly you feel shitty.
And you're frustrated. Generally, it's frustration.
You've run into a wall.
Yeah.
You hit a wall.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough calories, then
it's even worse.
The pump's going to go even worse.
Yeah.
And so your body suddenly goes into this hangover phase where everything's shit. Everything you just made was shit.
Right.
And you don't want to. You're just why did I think that was good? That's
right.
So everything floods back in. So
well, it's it's an extreme.
Yes.
There's not a
it's not gentle
slide.
No.
You're just, and I know it well too. It's you're fantastic. Everything's great. You could literally be Lion King right now, hanging over the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
You're being held, showed off, all the things, and then all of a sudden you fall.
Yeah. And it's artificial. What you made was not faulty. What you made was not shit. But your happy chemicals are depleted.
Right. So you're like, everything sucks.
And you need to stop touching what you were working on.
Yeah. Walk away. Eat something.
You need a cookie,
go on a walk.
You need some tea.
Right.
Go on a walk. Go watch a movie. Go do something, because right now all the good juice in your head is gone.
Right. Which that's so crazy.
Your frontal lobe kicks back in.
Do they have like a marker on, is it a time frame, or is it just, I guess some bodies probably push it out faster than others, right?
Right, so how fast are you going to deplete it? How quick are you going to go through it?
Yeah.
So it's like everything else in our bodies. We are unique individuals, and it's going to react differently to everybody, but also like working out. The more you do it, your body goes, oh, you're going to need these 6 chemicals regularly?
Oh, for longer. Oh, okay.
Well, tomorrow I'll make a little bit more. If you use them.
That's so cool.
And then the next day we'll use a little bit more.
Oh my gosh.
But
that's so primal in a way.
Yeah, but if you don't use if you don't use those good chemicals, your body will go into a conservation, because it takes an extreme amount of calories.
Yeah, another reason to eat.
This is what I'm leading to. Yeah, is that if you do not have, if you're not giving
your brain uses the most calories.
Right, it's like 20, something like crazy.
Yeah,
like 20%
it's
of our
crazy.
calories.
It's crazy.
So if your body doesn't have those calories to make the good feeling chemicals, it won't. And it'll hold it back, because it won't spend, you're not using those chemicals.
Yeah.
So we're not going to make extra chemicals. And so then you fall into this downward spiral of not feeling like you have meaning, not feeling like you don't feel warm and fuzzy about anything. You don't feel excited about it.
Yeah.
You don't have these dopamine spikes. You don't have these endorphins. You don't have, like, that was one of the other ones. You don't have, like,
it just flew out. There it is.
You don't have these moments of the kick where you're just like, oh, this was. And so then when we talk about creativity, or when I'm teaching creativity, or teaching to people about like how to utilize their skill sets, I talk about where you spend in your juice.
Like where else are those flow state spaces going to?
If you're doing it scrubbing your toilet, it's fine. But if every day,
or like social media, I mean, I guess that like is a dopamine hit, right? It's like how much time did you spend on a screen this morning before starting your art project? You're not probably going to enter it into the best state.
You used all your juice.
Exactly.
So by the time I'm just going to scroll through TikTok or Instagram real quick. I'm just going to get
10 minutes of that probably zaps you.
Not against it.
No,
not against it.
I'm not either. I go to TikTok school regularly.
But what if you did TikTok school afterwards?
Exactly.
When you're in that refractory.
Well, and that can probably bring it back, and then you're like, oh, I'm inspired again.
Use your juice on what you want to use it on.
Yeah.
Don't use it on.
And eat food. Eat a lot of food.
Eat food and use it regularly. So this is what we talk about, the 5-minute practice, where it's like if you can instill a 5-minute practice into every day, like it kind of in the front of the day, your body's going to get used to saying like, oh, you know what? When she wakes up in the morning, she does her breathing, she does her yoga, she does her meditation,
which is fantastic for cortisol.
Yep. She gets a meal into her, and just pretty quickly we got to be ready with all of the good drugs, because she's going to do a real quick 5-minute practice,
right?
And it sets you off. It starts to set you in motion for this creative exploration, and it's kind of like your body will take care of you. You know this. Like your body,
it really does, and it's so freaking powerful. Like I thought I ruined my body, and granted, now when I skip meals, it's a little bit more sensitive than if someone didn't have an eating disorder for 27, 28 years.
Yeah.
But
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
I just want to recognize what you just said. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal, yeah. And so now I have a little bit more sensitivities, but also your body is so powerful at repairing.
Yeah.
We live in a society where we're told by pharma that we're ill.
Yeah.
And guess what? Like, we are powerful walking cellular machines.
I mean, this research around like the good brain drugs and the vagus nerve and like all of these other like.
Which there's a ton of like online freebie exercises on how to like activate the vagus nerve, and I highly recommend. Yeah.
Well, just your gut biome and all of these things that felt a little woo-woo to us, earlier on.
Right, but it's like researched.
It turns out like science just kind of keeps coming forward to present like, oh, it felt like we didn't have a great explanation for it, so we used magic. But like it turns out there's a real reason that what felt like magic is just science.
And it's also magic.
But yeah. No, I mean, are you fucking mirrors are magic?
Yeah.
Like the night stars magic.
Oh,
like
Totally.
Sunsets, magic.
Yeah.
But
Phosphorescence, magic. Aurora borealis.
the Borobolala.
Help me out here.
The donkey in the sky.
Yeah. Amazing.
Amazing. But we don't. The magic doesn't have to be disarmed. They don't have to be disarmed from their magic just because they work and there's a scientific explanation for it.
Yeah.
And it turns out that like your creativity is like the subject of your creativity and what you choose to like focus your creativity on. That's infinite. It can go in any direction, any way you want it to go. But the kind of mechanism that allows you to feel really good about what you're doing, that's chemistry. It's a really strong, powerful, and it's on board. You're born with it. You can develop it just like any other muscle, just like any other physiological thing in your body. You can hone it and make it like work for you and do better things. And also, but like it comes down to like knowing that that's what's happening.
Right.
And saying like, I'm not going to spend my juice on getting in an argument with my partner in the first part of the day.
Right. Yeah, no, not worth it.
Or being stressed that we're not getting to school on time, or being stressed that the daughter didn't eat the piece of jam toast in the right way, because it's going to use my juice. And I need to save that juice for when I want to apply it to the creative practice.
Yeah. And so you've played with this actively.
And it's like everything. It's like working out at the gym. Like, like every time you think like, oh, is this the time it's going to work or not work? Like, I do not want to go I don't want to get dressed and go do this thing. But the moment I sit down and just start scribbling, or I just start, like just asking questions, creative questions about about what does it take to build interest in an object, and and I just start scratching through this murky layers, and suddenly your mind clears. And you get there, and you start just going. I built a lemonade stand for my daughter yesterday. It was like,
it's really cool, by the way.
It was just, but it was like, my wife was like, "You built a lemonade stand today?" And it's like got welded steel parts and like multifaceted like boards and like, and I was like, yeah, and
it's double layered, so there's like a actual place. There's a shelf that no one sees that you can hang a sign on the outside where you can keep all your supplies, so it's not a messy table.
I'm really proud of it. But it was like, that was the juice, baby. That was like,
you were out after.
Time
to eat?
Yes. Yeah. It was like, I ran right up until dinner time. We got the girl from school and like we made dinner, and then, I didn't make dinner. I had to go buy a pizza.
Which is my favorite food.
Yeah, I'm glad. It should be. I went to
You can put anything on it. A pizza can literally hold all the things.
But
it's a complete meal.
It's a complete meal. But I was completely exhausted. I was out. I was tapped out completely because I was problem solving and coming up with creative solutions. And
and you designed it, right?
Yeah.
I saw your drawings.
Yeah.
So there's that too. That takes a lot of energy.
It takes a lot of brain chemistry and calories and and I pushed all this stuff into it, and then I did it, and then it got to a place I really liked. And it's really exciting. But it's like, that's a good use of juice in a day.
Yeah.
Because there's and that's the other thing, is if you can have a material output that you can point at and say, oh, that's what my brain was able to do.
Right.
Then that encourages you the next day to come back to it.
Yeah. I have a little story about this.
Please.
Now I'm making this connection, but
right? Like now you're like, oh.
Yeah. So I've lived in Santa Barbara for about 14 years now, maybe a little more, a little less, I can't remember. But before I moved here, I was living in Washington State, and I worked at a mental hospital for children, and I was the art teacher. I also it was art teacher, but also you're doing art therapy. And I was working with kids that were not okay. They were in the system from age 6 to 21, and they were pushed out of school education because they were violent, or most of them were violent. There was like a wide range, but none of them had homes, families. They were just in houses, like, I forget what they called them, but with a lot of other kids in the same boat. But come art class, it's maybe not even an hour long. I learned real quick, like, what works and what doesn't, and at the end of the day, none of it actually worked.
Worked for what?
Well, so I would, they'd be so excited to do this thing. And I would always, like, open up the floor, like, what do you want to do? What art mediums do we want to play with? And I would have all the supplies. on the front table. We'd be ready and at it, working, and they'd all be in that flow state. I would watch it. I would see it, just the excitement, like, look at what I'm making, is so cool. And then one kid would zap out and just throw the table, all the supplies. We'd have to exit, lock him in, let him do his thing. I mean, it was, now I'm realizing I visibly was seeing that tap out.
Yeah.
And for them, they didn't have probably nearly the amount because there was so much else going on psychologically, and also so under-resourced for calories.
Sure.
So under-resourced.
Right.
Those kids weren't having proper food.
No.
They didn't have access to it.
Well, sleep and
none of it. Yeah.
Any of the.
And they were spending their life fighting.
Yeah. So their fight. What is it? Fight, flee, or freeze.
And fawn.
Fawn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I don't know as much about fawn either, so I can't speak to it in a really big way. But yeah, fight, flight, freeze, fawn.
Those are always active. It's kind of like they never turn off.
No. Yeah.
You know, it's like impossible to get them to kind of, put the shield down.
Yeah, and we were familiar with their charts, obviously, and all of them had trauma. It was all trauma. Some of them had trauma from being prescribed medication for ADHD or autism or any kind of neurodivergence. And at like age 2, starting at age 2, which is neurotic to me. And they're off the medication, but the side effects have absolutely damaged them. They can't function.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, here, have them do some art. And
bye.
Well,
run.
Well, having that larger conversation about what we were saying earlier, when somebody looks at you and they say, "What do you do?" or "Who are you?" and you say, "I'm an artist," and then we kind of have that, like both of us have that self-consciousness of trying to explain ourselves,
right? And gain the approval of the person asking, why does it matter?
I need them to know
because they've been to a museum and they know who Picasso is.
Yeah, and that illusion of nobody knows what a real artist is, or what a real artist, like they just can't, they're really just trying to figure you out so that they can put you into, oh, you're a dentist, great, I know a dentist.
I know you put hands in mouths.
Right, I know what dentists do, and then they can ask a more finite question, and we face them with this enigma.
Right, and then they ask, what genre do you work in? And I'm like, what's a genre?
Yeah.
That's like, that is the question that I'm like, don't ask me. Don't ask me.
What do you say? What's your go-to?
I don't know, because I'm like, well, I literally touch anything that will create something. So what's that genre?
Yeah. Lately, I've just been saying sculpture.
Yeah, I mean, I play with clay. I print make. Sometimes I just throw paint on a canvas, and other times I draw a human's face. What genre am I? I don't know.
You take the most genred artist you can think of, like any genre, like an artist that like is known for this one thing.
I am the Picasso genre.
Yeah, and it's like he was an incredible sculptor.
Right.
He did funny, goofy, great, weird sculptures. It's like Yayoi Kusama is like.
Oh, huge fan.
Yeah.
Huge fan.
Oh, the polka dots. Oh, she does nothing but polka dots, and it's like, yeah, but like if
mirrors.
Yeah.
Lights.
But right, full installation.
Mm-hmm.
Full immersion.
Yeah.
And you realize, like, so the most, the biggest, most famous artists you can think of are not confined to one gesture.
Right. Or like Weiwei, like the sunflower seeds, the porcelain sunflower seeds in the masses. It's mine too. Like, I think about that piece and I'm like, what genre am I? I'm not a genre.
Right, and so it really comes down to like trying to be generous with the person who's asking the question and trying to give them a foothold into art. And really, the thing to do at that point, I think I would like to embody this more. I struggle with it, but would be to turn and say, "Oh, do you like art? What kind of art are you into?
Right,
Who are you listening to? Like, what kind of work are you looking at? Like, where?"
Well, I think they're asking left-brained questions, right? They want, like you said, hard, concrete answers. They want to connect with what you're telling them, and it's hard to connect to artists who are like in the water.
Yeah. I'm still trying to analyze my favorite way to communicate with people.
Yeah, I
that's
know.
that's not a satisfying answer.
No, yeah.
And so it comes down to that of like, I don't feel satisfied, so how can I give you a satisfying answer?
Right.
And then I come off like I come off however I come off.
Well, and people ask, well, what are you making right now? I don't know. I don't have. What body of work are you proud of? I don't have a body of work. I just make shit.
I've been helping my friend make this podcast called It's Hard to Say.
There we go. You also just had an axe workshop that was fantastic.
Oh, thanks. It was great. Yeah. But I think, you know what, I'm gonna force you out on this. Thank you so much for having me. This was really a lot of fun to have a chat with you about all of the things I like talking about.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. I so appreciate that you were willing to come on here and have a conversation. I feel like we talk about so many facets of life in general when I see you, and so I knew we wouldn't have a shortage of things to discuss. So here in town, Miscellaneous Workshop is a fantastic place too. Let us know.
Miscellaneousworkshop.com.
Yeah, and you are open to events and workshops here?
We do all sorts of things. You know, send us a message and check in. You never know. If you just want to get on our mailing list, you can do that. If you want to partner with us and come up with some kind of creative workshop or just need to be a facility, we can talk about that too.
Yeah, and I'll put all those links in the show notes so you can find him on Instagram, on the web, all the spaces, and maybe even if you're in Santa Barbara, take an axe workshop. There's another one coming up this summer. July 9th. That this episode will be out by then. So we have an axe workshop coming up this summer for those Santa Barbara folks. Highly recommend. I had no idea what it entailed. You literally make an axe and learn all the bits and pieces that go into making an axe, what kind of axe you want to make, and then you make a leather sheath for it, which was probably one of the cooler parts, watching everybody learn how to work with leather, which is really primal and amazing.
It's we could do an entire podcast
on axe.
I was just really glad to have a chance to I don't know, share with you and like just hear your feedback is always so intelligent and fun. So I really appreciate
thank you. Same. And Patrick's the reason why this podcast exists. So huge thank you, and thank you to all the listeners today. Thank you for being here. You can find me on Instagram and the web. Instagram is @thisishardtosay with a period between each word. The website is www.thisishardtosay.me. My more personal and graphic design account is @ChelseaWillett_designs. Those will also be in the show notes below. If you want to support this project and podcast, there's a few ways to do so. You can head to my website, click the support button in the top right of the navigation, and that will lead you to how to help. You can also submit your own story anonymously, or you can share who you are. If this podcast spoke to you, it would be so appreciated to subscribe, leave a review, click some stars, and share it with your people. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.